That was packed. We talked about everything from finding ways to create more freedom for ourselves, both on the internet and off the internet. Additionally, we moved into MiCA. Do we feel that MiCA is good or bad for Europe? Do we feel that regulations are going to help or hurt us as it relates to innovation? Again, if I could ask my speakers to head to the back so we can keep the noise down a little bit. And then we were talking about Bitcoin as well. And we've seen many use cases, not just used for finance. We have digital art, of course. We have event ticketing. We have communities that are being built on crypto, through crypto, Bitcoin as well. And then we moved into the fourth industrial revolution and how potentially we're going to have new digital governments that may be the corporations that we've already started to be served by. Will Apple and Google and Microsoft and companies like this now be the new ruling parties for us since we do so many of our transactions online? And so that was a really interesting point. I'd love to see that conversation continue and how regulations can be interjected in those areas where those companies that are collecting all of our data, that are facilitating our day-to-day, how are they being regulated in this new digital space? So really dynamic conversation, and we're going to have a keynote up next. And this is also continuing on decentralization. I want to welcome Patrick Joyce from ResearchHub to the stage. If you can please give him a round of applause.
Hey, everybody. It's good to be here.
And Patrick is going to be discussing the Open Lab, Decentralizing Scientific Research. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I'm going to be talking about decentralizing scientific research. My name is Patrick. I'm one of the co-founders of ResearchHub. Just a little bit of background on myself. I'm a huge science nerd. I was really lucky in undergrad. I got to do some research at Johns Hopkins, studying the epigenetic signature of cancer stem cells. It was an amazing experience, and I fell in love with academic science because it was like a group of 30-plus people who were well-funded and were able to explore whatever they perceived to be like their own intellectual curiosity. It was an amazing experience, convinced me to start a PhD in molecular biology at Boston University, and I quickly found that not all academic science is quite as lovely as a well-funded Hopkins lab. There are a lot of issues in the way that we fund and publish science that reduce the quality of life for the average researcher and also the quality of results that are the end result of scientific research. So in today's talk, I'm going to give a quick overview of kind of the problems that exist in academia. I'm going to talk about DeSci, or decentralized science, and how we're trying to address these problems, and then specifically mention what we're building at ResearchHub. So this graphic's a little bit small, but this is kind of like a nice overview of kind of how academic science is funded. Typically, taxpayer dollars or a wealthy patron will give capital to a funding body, which then fields applications from scientists and decides who to give grants to. If you think about like funding startups, it's kind of, there are objective metrics, how you can compare one startup to the next. You can look at like traction or revenue and kind of determine like which company might be the best investment. Unfortunately, in science, it's a little bit tougher. There aren't really objective metrics that you can use to determine like what's the best research group in order to give your capital to. So the industry has kind of come up with a kind of proxy solution called bibliometrics, or citation-based metrics. The idea here is that you'll fund scientists who, one, publish a lot, and then have their work cited by other scientists. In theory, this makes a lot of sense, right? Like, you can trust your capital with a scientist who is like valued by other scientists in their field. Unfortunately, scientists are really smart. They understand this is kind of how the ecosystem works. And rather than just publishing like unbiased findings, they try and optimize their work in order to generate a lot of citations in order to make themselves more eligible for grants in the future. So I'm sure you all are familiar with Goodhart's law, but this is a really great example of it. Once a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. And in academia, it kind of creates this culture of publish or perish. The idea here is that when you're aiming to maximize publications, there's a lot of unnecessary competition. So say I'm studying like tumor biology. There are many scientists all across the world who are studying the same thing. Rather than collaborate with them in an open way in order to move the world forward, I actually compete with them. I'll hide my data and kind of keep it to myself until I'm ready to publish it, so that way I can make sure that I get the publication and the citations and increase my eligibility for future grants. That's a problem. We should be working together. In addition, when I want to maximize my own citations, rather than sharing raw data that's easily auditable, I might use some statistics in order to try and paint a picture that's a little bit more compelling. Because, we're all humans, and it's a lot more exciting to cite a revolutionary paper rather than just something that's, kind of true and boring. This problem is compounded by a hyper-competitive job market. In the United States, less than 2% of first-year PhD students end up becoming research professors. And when you look at which universities do produce research professors, it's pretty much just the Ivy Leagues. As a graduate student, you have to do almost anything you can in order to get a postdoc at a really prestigious university, just to have the chance of being a research professor at a mid-tier university. The end result of kind of this system of incentives is something that we like to call the reproducibility crisis. There have been estimates that between 50 to 85% of all scientific research is unable to be replicated. This is a huge problem, because we're spending money creating knowledge that's kind of like a shaky foundation for which to build upon. And when you look at the end result, it's a tremendous amount of waste. There have been estimates that it's over $170 billion wasted because of this every year. I don't know if you guys have been following the news, but scientific fraud has become kind of trendy recently. So there's this kind of industry of paper mills, where, thanks to LLMs and, ChatGPT, it's now become very easy to produce fake science that can be cited and eventually help your resume so you can get another grant. We also spend a lot of time chasing theories that are not replicable. So the amyloid beta hypothesis of Alzheimer's. There's been tens of billions of dollars chasing this idea for the pathology of Alzheimer's that originated from a paper containing figures that were photoshopped, which is just incredible to think about. So what is decentralized science? Decentralized science is a new movement using tools that have become available to us due to blockchain technology. These are a lot of properties that you all are probably familiar with. So you can think about decentralized storage. One issue that currently exists is scientific papers are published in journals that don't have unlimited runway. Nature came out with a paper earlier this year saying about 25% of all science is published in journals that might run out of funding in the next couple of years. We're actually seeing scientific papers be removed from the internet because of this. So there's no perpetual storage. As everyone here is familiar, anyone can use a block explorer on the Bitcoin blockchain, go back in time and see the transaction where the Bitcoin pizza was purchased. We want to bring this type of utility to scientific research. There's also community ownership. If you look at a group like Friends with Benefits, blockchain kind of creates governance incentives for people all across the world to come together, pool their capital, and allocate it in a way where everyone knows what the rules are beforehand. And this allows us to create new things in really interesting ways. And finally, financial incentives. So how do you get a bunch of miners all across the world to collectively spend as much electricity as a small nation? Block rewards. So using blockchains, you can come up with creative ways to help encourage folks to do things that wouldn't necessarily make sense in a world 10 years ago. So at ResearchHub, we're very lucky to be a community of scientists. I'm a scientist. Almost all of our community comes from PhD programs. And so there was this sort of meme in 2017 that blockchain was a hammer looking for a nail. We come from the nail, and we see blockchain as a tool to actually fix the problems that we've experienced on a day-to-day basis. We're not the only ones either. There are a lot of people in the DeSci landscape. Projects are popping up left and right now. And so I'd encourage you all to take a look at some of the really exciting things that are being built in this industry. For instance, DeSci Labs is a company based out of Zurich. What they're trying to do is build a decentralized scientific journal on Ethereum and IPFS, where anyone can share research and anyone can access research using tools that already exist within the Ethereum ecosystem. Another really cool company is Molecule out of Berlin. Molecule has created the concept of a BioDAO, essentially an organization where investors and patients can come together, pool their capital, and fund projects with the end goal of producing an IP NFT. So a new liquid marketplace for scientific research, intellectual property, that actually helps to give patients ownership over the cures, which are being experimented on them. So now to talk about ResearchHub and what we're most excited about, which is using financial incentives to accelerate the pace of scientific research. So here's our product. It's kind of like a Reddit for science with a token incentive. On ResearchHub, you can share any academic paper that exists. You can use a lab notebook and a reference manager to publish new content natively to our forum, and then you can curate it using an upvoting mechanism. Within the paper, we have inline commenting. So anyone can come in, share their thoughts, and even do peer reviews at a very high resolution level. When you share good content on ResearchHub, you earn Research Coin, which is an ERC20 token. In ResearchHub, what you can use Research Coin for is creating bounties. So here's a great example. We have a PhD researcher within our community who shared a lot of good content, got enough votes, earned some Research Coin, and they were stuck in a protocol in their own lab. So what they did is they used some of the Research Coin that they had previously earned and created a bounty for an expert to come in and help them get unstuck in their own work. They put a bounty up, 24 hours later, someone helped, and they were able to move on. In addition, we're really excited about peer review. Traditionally within academia, peer review goes unpaid. It's kind of like a professional guilt trip, where as a scientist, it's your responsibility to contribute to the community. Unfortunately, you're kind of providing a service for-profit journals who are able to take advantage of this free labor. And the problem is that it takes about 3 months currently to find someone in order to do this free labor on any given paper. So at ResearchHub, we want to accelerate the pace of scientific research, and we've started to create bounties for peer review on preprints, which are kind of like papers before they go to peer review in a journal. This is the traction that we've gotten so far. We're about 2 years into this, and we're starting to see a lot of excitement. I'd say we probably get a new peer review 2 to 3 times a day, and it's been increasing a lot recently. Just to help provide some context, as I said, typically it takes between 3 to 9 months to find a peer reviewer in the traditional ecosystem. And so far, using $150 Research Coin bounties, we're at 16 days. So it's a pretty drastic increase. There's lots of different things that we can experiment with at ResearchHub when it comes to financial incentives for science, and this is just a small example. We're still pre-product market fit and experimenting with the best way to help use these incentives to accelerate the pace of scientific research. But we've seen some pretty exciting early results. So yeah, one of the best parts about this project is that we get to work with scientists and they can help us build this product in a way that's best for them. So if you're excited about what we're building, I would encourage you to join our Discord, talk to Ricardo over there, who's the director of the ResearchHub Foundation, and help to contribute to building this new ecosystem for scientific research. So yeah, thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Alors, il va falloir les 4 micros et je te laisse. Il va falloir tout le micro.
Thank you so much to our last speaker as it relates to decentralized research. I think that's so important and a lot of things that I didn't know.